Hail, hail everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the new Celtic Minded podcast. I'm Frank, and he's Tommy, with the living legend that is Frank McGarvey, over 113 goals for the Hoops, someone who speaks his mind, and when he talks with a certain degree of authority, given that he's won every single title that can be won in Scotland in every division and all of the cups as well. Frank, for the second week in succession, we're meeting with a wee bit of a spring in our step because we've had yet another positive week for the Glasgow Green and White of Celtic. A convincing 3-0 victory in Europe against the Czech team Jablonec, followed yesterday with a very convincing victory that certainly wasn't portrayed in the scoreline of 3-2. What do you take as the positives from Celtic this week?
Well, the positives were he played 3 up front, he played Forrest wide, Kyogo wide left, which I thought wasn't right, and Edouard up through the middle. But when Edouard scored that brilliant goal made by Kyogo, first of all to Forrest with a fantastic pass, really a world class. I don't say anything world class, but that was a world class pass to bend the ball with the outside of his right foot, to have the right direction and the right pace, to have these three things all in one, and passed it right to Forrest, who came inside, and it was easy for him because the pass was so good. He came inside, he passed a perfect ball into Edouard, and he put it into the net. An absolutely brilliant goal made by Kyogo with a world-class pass.
Fantastic. You know all about making debuts for Celtic, and I want to talk to you about that in a moment. But in terms of Celtic fans throughout the world, Ange Postecoglou is now into a new chapter in Celtic's history. And I don't know about you, we've already said how much we like the guy. I think every single time he speaks, he endears himself to us. I mean, yesterday, what a lovely touch when he mentioned his deceased father. And he talked about his father being up there somewhere looking down, and he would have been happy, particularly with the first 45 minutes yesterday. I've got to say, I never made the game. I had to watch it in the telly. But I sat in absolute wonderment at the domination for that first 45 minutes. I thought we were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And the only downside is we only took a couple of the chances. We should have taken more.
Well, if you make about 10 chances and you score 3 goals, I think that's pretty good. So I'm very happy that Celtic scored 3 goals. But again, what tempers my enthusiasm is Hart scoring 2 goals. Now, I think he's done well with the forwards. The forwards are scoring the goal, we're attacking, and the passing that he plays, the way he plays football, I just love that. That's the way I would want to play football. And he does it exactly the way I want it, and it's just brilliant for me. And I cannot believe I'm saying this after the shenanigans of the last year at Celtic Park and everything that's went on, that Celtic have had a bit of genius, and they've got this manager in. The manager is everything at a football club, and they've picked the right manager, and that is brilliant. But again, losing the 2 goals tempers my enthusiasm.
Frank, it's got to, as Celtic supporters, every single one of us must look at that first 45 yesterday and say, that's the standard. That's the heights we want to reach every single game. High tempo, high press, beautiful interchange, one-touch football, always on the front foot, always anticipating. Everything about it was positive. However, it's got to be tempered, as you say, with the fact that we then come out in the second half, and obviously Hearts changed their formation, so that changes the mix a wee bit, there's no doubt about that. But what we did is we dropped our tempo and we lost 2 goals that we really shouldn't have lost. The first one, Big Starfelt, if I'm hand on heart, if I'm very honest, I like the look of him. I think he's got potential. But yesterday was probably his worst game I've seen him. I thought I sit with my pen and paper and watch the games, Frank, and a cross or a tick if somebody makes a good pass, a good tackle, wins a header, scores a goal. And I had lots of crosses against Starfelt's name yesterday. On the contrast to that, maybe ironically, I thought Welsh yesterday was outstanding. I thought it was the best game I've seen in a Celtic jersey. He had one blot in his copybook, and it was a foolish tackle that got him a booking, a deserved booking. But apart from that, he passed well. He won every one of his headers in the air. And then he goes and scores a great goal. And, more than that, he had 2 other efforts at goal with the head from corners. Now, for yonks, we've not been a threat at set pieces, Frank. Yesterday, we were a threat at set pieces, and I thought Welsh had a fantastic game. But, and you may not agree with me on this one, and I like him as a person, I think he tries, but I still think Greg Taylor is a weakness, both in height and in pace, and I think Hearts targeted him yesterday with long balls over the top and long balls for challenging in the air, winning the header, and then getting in behind us. So there's still some stuff to be sorted out at the back, isn't there?
Aye, Andy's got a difficult job with the defence. He's the hardest thing really is to get the forward line together and the attack going. Rogic was brilliant as well, So they had 3 forwards playing up front and Rogic behind them. So they used up a lot of energy in the first half. Which led to them being weak, but they made a lot of substitutions. I don't think that helped the defensive matters, and Celtic were kind of all over the place the last 10 minutes, and I was a bit worried that Hearts might get another goal and it could be difficult. But they won 3-2. The fans loved it. Now they go and work hard every week, and they went up and paid their money, and they were delighted. And for me, we must keep the fans happy, because without the fans, Celtic are nothing.
You mentioned the enthusiasm last week of Kyogo, and again yesterday, his enthusiasm was infectious. He set up the goal with, as you called it, a world-class pass. A world-class pass outside of his foot. Absolutely brilliant. I've got to say to you, Frank, I don't know about other fans, but when I was watching it in real time, I thought Forrest should hit it. I thought, hit it, one touch and hit it. And when he took the extra touch, I was really worried. Oh, thank goodness he touched it back and Eddie finished it. But Kyogo has now played 4 games, scored 5 goals. You know what it's like to go to a big club like Celtic, although you came to Celtic from a big club because you came from Liverpool, and at the time you signed in March of 1980, you were a record Scottish signing, 250 grand. What was it like to come and try and settle in with Celtic?
Well, it was £275,000, Tommy. I don't want to say anything about that, but that's what it was. I don't want to be downgraded in this podcast. But when I went to Celtic at the start, they wanted. I signed on the Monday, I think, and they asked me to play on the Tuesday against St Mirren. And I asked Desmond White why would he want to do that. He said, "Oh, add maybe another 5,000 to 7,000 people." So they
it's not like Desmond White to be concerned about money.
So no, he done a good job with Celtic, so he did, and he done well. But at that time, I played my first game against St Mirren, and that was my debut. I didn't play well at all, and the extra fans came and they were disappointed with me. And I went in after the game, and John Clark said to me, "The ink's not dry in your contract yet, Frank." And that upset me a bit. That's him telling me I had a stinker. And we played against Hibs on the Saturday. I scored a goal, and I think we won 3 or 4-0. And John, I had another poor game, but I scored in the game. That helped me a wee bit. But John said after the game, "Frank, the ink is still not dry. It's still not dry on the contract." So we had to play Rangers in midweek. I was under severe pressure. We had to win that game, and it was nothing each. with 2 minutes to go, Roy Aitken crossed the ball and I headed it. The one thing that I done that Welsh done yesterday, he headed it down in the ground and then came up. And that was a brilliant goal by Welsh yesterday. And that's exactly what I done that night. And I headed the ball down low so Peter McCloy couldn't get it because he was about 6'8" at the time. And he couldn't get down to that. So the ball went in the net and I've never ran so fast to the jungle in all my life. And I put my hands up and I was so proud, so proud. I went into the dressing room after it and we're just coming out of the shower and John Clark came in and I asked John, I said, is that ink dried yet, John, my contract? And John said, yes, it's dry.
Brilliant. And the rest, they say, is history. And you, Frank, unlike Kyogo, who's coming to Celtic, not as a former fan, not as somebody from Glasgow, he's coming a different continent and having to settle in. But in some respects, the pressure on you, I mean, you're probably more akin to James McCarthy coming on yesterday because he's been a lifelong Celtic fan. Did you feel that extra bit of pressure because you were a boyhood Celtic fan, somebody who looked up to the Celtic team? I mean, who was your favourite as growing up as a boy? Who did you look at and say, I want to be them?
Well, I remember going, my first games were very good. I was about 10, 11 at the time. And my first games were European games, Vojvodina, and games like that. And I went to watch Celtic and it was an amazing atmosphere. And I felt sorry for the players that weren't playing well because the fans didn't miss them, which is good for fans to do. And I said, oh, and they were playing and they scored and they get in. The 1967 Cup final when Tommy Sheridan scored that goal, I jumped the highest of any person in the world when he scored that goal. And after the game, I said, I wouldn't mind playing for Celtic. And my dream came true.
Hand on heart, Frank, I've got to say, I'm jealous of you. I'm jealous because you did what I and several million Celtic fans across the world would love to have done. Support that club and then go and play for that club, and more than play for that club, to score 113 goals for that club, so many against Rangers, but also the dead important goals like the cup final, which will come on to another podcast. I don't want to go into the detail of it because we've got a whole season and you've got so many stories and I want to spread them over that period of time. But that signing, I remember that year and I remember that time and I remember you signing because on the 5th of March, a couple of days before my 16th birthday, I was 15 years of age and I went to Parkhead to watch Celtic play Real Madrid. And I remember it was Laurie Cunningham's, I think it might have even been his debut for Real Madrid. And I remember watching him in the warm-up and thinking, wow, the guy was doing things with the ball, keeping it up, all that stuff. He looked outstanding, he looked very athletic, and I'm thinking, we could be in for a doing here tonight. And yet, we went out, nothing each at half time, and we scored 2 goals, George McCluskey, and then the late and great and never forgotten Johnny Doyle with a head to give us a 2-0. And by the way, people have got to remember this is 1980, and it's the European Champions Cup quarter-final. But we've got 1 foot in the semi-final. We had to go to Madrid a fortnight later on the 19th of March. You signed on the 11th of March of 1980. Were you involved in any way in the squad or in the team? What was your memory of the return leg, which unfortunately we lost 3-0?
Well, I couldn't play in that game because I was not allowed to because I just signed for Celtic. So I was not allowed to play in that game. But they took me over to watch the game. And I always remember George McCluskey went through after about 5 minutes on the goalkeeper. And if he puts that ball in, we're through. He missed that chance. And after that, Real Madrid just put pressure upon pressure. At that time, as a team, the team that I played in at Celtic I'm talking about the whole team, weren't a good defensive team. We could score goals for fun and we could play attractive football, but that was the thing that we had missing, was we never had a good defence. Where Aberdeen and Dundee United, they 2 teams had brilliant defences. And that's what the difference with Celtic, Aberdeen, Dundee United were they had two brilliant defences, and our defence wasn't up to that. In 1982-83 season, me, Charlie Nicholas and George McCluskey scored over 100 goals and Dundee United won the league. That sums it up. That's why I'm talking about Postecoglou. He must get this defence right. He gets that right and he's attacking the way he is. Anything is possible again at Celtic Park.
It's a great point, Frank, because if you don't lose goals, you've always got a better chance of winning a game, haven't you? If you lose a goal, you've got a chance of losing a game. But if you don't lose a goal, you're not going to lose a game. So right, you're absolutely right.
I'm just going to go. The two best managers defensively we've had is Jockstein, and because the defence was brilliant, they won the European Cup. Martin O'Neill comes in a long time after Jockstein. He says, I want to buy in my own players. I want full control of everything. And he gets a brilliant defence. And what happens? Into the final. Dundee United, who were getting 5,000 people at their games, get into the final of the UEFA Cup and get into the semi-final of the Champions League. Dundee United and Aberdeen won a UEFA Cup. The one thing they four teams had, they all had brilliant defences. Now, without a brilliant defence, Celtic will do nothing.
I still think that we need two more accomplished, athletic, bigger physically fullbacks, because I think that particularly on the left, Greg will be a good pool player, but I'm not sure he will be good for keeping the clean sheets that you're talking about.
That's the hardest thing for Angie. He must get the defence right, and it doesn't really matter who he buys, as long as they're good players and they listen to him and they become a unit at the back. You can have four good players at the back that don't play well together, or you can have four average players who are a team at the back. Nothing goes by them. That's what I want to see Angie doing, getting a team, but not also getting that defence, but keeping the defence for a year and a half. That's what Dundee United and Aberdeen done in the early 80s. They kept that same team, and they had the defences for 5, 6, 7 years and get into the final of European competitions, to the lower teams in Scottish football in the Premier League, other than Celtic and Rangers, and they could do that because of good defences. Celtic, twice they've had good defences in their history, they've got into the final of European competitions. Does that not tell you what we need? And Angie knows that, and it won't take 6 months, and it won't take a year. It'll take a year and a half, 2 years to get it right, and then after that you've got a good defence for the next 5 years, and anything then is possible, especially with the forwards we've got.
I tell you what, Frank, I do think that Ange has a greater difficulty than even perhaps Jock and Martin O'Neill had, and that's because of the way he wants his team to play, because he wants them to play out for the back. And with the greatest respect, neither Martin's team nor Jock's team necessarily played out from the back. Big Billy was a fantastic footballer, a fantastic leader, fantastic man, but he wasn't the greatest ball player in the world. But if you look at the way Ange wants his team to play, he wants his two centre-backs to be able to be comfortable bringing the ball out, playing with the keeper, looking for passes down the lines. And therefore he's not just looking for a big Bobo Baldy that Martin was able to find, who would win the ball 99.9% of the time. Big Bobo wasn't that good passing the ball. He needs to find centre-backs that are not just comfortable and aggressive and winning it, but can pass as well, because he plays out for the back. And that's not always easy in today's market. I heard Michael Arteta of Arsenal last week comment. He made an interesting comment where he said that he thinks this transfer market, the current transfer market, is the hardest that he's ever encountered because of all the financial difficulties caused by COVID and all of the uncertainties with clubs across the world. So it is going to be difficult for him to find both fullbacks and another centre-back who he thinks is comfortable at playing out the way he wants to play.
Yeah, but I still think that he's got to get the scouting system sorted. and he's got to say to the scouting system, this is what I need for my right-sided player, this is what I need for my left-sided player. They go out, work very hard. It's not easy being a scout, you've got to work very hard. They go out, get the right players that he wants, and get the 4 of them, or the 5 of them, or the 3 of them, whatever it is, and get them playing with each other all the time. Because you can't just throw guys in, and that's what this Celtic team is brilliant to watch just now, and I'm loving it, and I can't believe I'm saying that after what's happened in the last year, but I'm loving it. But the only thing that tempers my enthusiasm is the defence. 2 goals against a Hearts team, remember, that didn't have a shot in the first half, which was good. They never had anybody up front to take the pressure away from the defence, and Hearts really sat in and told Celtic to come at them, and Celtic know how to attack now, because we've got brilliant forwards and we've got great Rogic. He makes goals, he's got magic feet, so we can score goals, we know that. But the defence, I know I'm going on about the defence an awful lot, but it's everything. If Celtic are going to do well in Europe and do well winning leagues, and remember, if they won the league this year, they get £40 million payment for that.
Massive prize.
It's a massive season for Angie, and I'm very confident that he'll get the defence sorted as well.
You know, we look at the stats for yesterday's game, Frank. We had 72% possession, 36 attempts on goal.
36?
36.
My goodness.
11 of them on target, and we come away with a 3-2. I mean, that's no good enough,
no.
Isn't it? You know, the stats show you that we dominated the game. If it had been a boxing match at half-time, the fight would have been stopped. I mean, but, as you say, and I know we're repeating ourselves, but it is necessary, and hopefully, I'm sure Ange knows it, the defence is critical to the future success of Celtic, because we can't go and lose 2 goals at home. Remember, we're at home, this isn't even away. But let's look at next week. We've got 2 important games, probably maybe the most important in the short term is the AZ Alkmaar on Wednesday night. We've got St Mirren on Sunday, and that's vital because it's a league game and we need to win our league games if we want to get that Champions League prize. But AZ Alkmaar, Dutch team, pretty competent. They've got some good players, although they've lost a couple of their better players for last season. That's a bigger test for Celtic, isn't it, on Wednesday night?
Yeah, it's a big test for Celtic, especially when we're losing 2 goals against Hearts. These teams are better than Hearts. So, as I said, that tempers my enthusiasm, and all the games are difficult just now because the team has just come together, and it takes time for the team. If it gets the same team, see if you can get the same team every single week playing, they become better and better all the time, because everybody knows what each other are doing, and that's so important in a game. So they've got hard. All the games are hard for Celtic, and all the games are hard for Rangers, because they're the champions, and they have got to keep that going. And Rangers have had a bad start to the season, but I'm now really looking forward to the Old Firm game, where I couldn't tell you who's going to win, but I think there'll be goals in it.
Well, there's no doubt there's going to be goals, and I think all Celtic fans, maybe 2 weeks ago, wouldn't have been looking forward to that game, but I think all Celtic fans now are looking forward to that game, because we do have a great threat going forward. Yes, we've still got the problems at the back, but think about it, Frank. 72% possession, 36 attempts at goal, 11 on target, and Abada wasn't playing. And you've got James McCarthy come on for only the last 10-15 minutes. In other words, we've got players that can strengthen the Celtic team now that have still to come in. Christie, who started the season on fire, wasn't he playing yesterday? Against Dundee last week, he was the most creative player, I think, set up 3 of the 6 goals. So from that point of view, we're now looking like the real deal. There's no doubt about it, but we need to keep that consistency going. Before we finish this particular episode, Frank, thoroughly enjoyed your chat, and the point you've made about the defence, I think, is absolutely spot on. But one of the controversies from yesterday's game was the booking of Edouard in the first half for diving in the box. And personally, I've got to say, I'm a huge Celtic fan, and I love Eddie. I love him even though he's not done it for his last season, although he's still a top goal scorer. But I was embarrassed. I thought it was an out-and-out dive. He didn't need to do it. That first 15 minutes or so yesterday, Eddie wasn't at the races. He picked himself up and had a reasonable game afterwards. But he dived. John Beaton, however, showed yet again why Celtic fans dislike him and why we always think he's biased. Because he was inconsistent. Because Gianelli does the very same thing in the second half, dives to try and get a penalty against Starfelt and doesn't get booked. And surely that's the problem, isn't it? It's inconsistency from referees that causes problems. However, Frank, you played centre forward for all the years. Did you ever dive?
I have to say that in all the years, I dived once. It was against Hearts at Love Street. I went in. I forget who the goalkeeper was. The English goalkeeper at the time. I went by him, and I didn't like the guy. And I went by him, and I threw myself into him and done a somersault, and I got a penalty. And I'm quite embarrassed about that. But I've never spoke about it, so everybody knows about it now.
Okay, there's honesty for you on the I'm Frank and he's Tommy podcast. Thanks for listening. Please tune in again next week and hopefully we'll be just as enthusiastic and we have a bigger spring in our step because we're nearer the Europa League and we'll have another 3 points in the bag. All the best. Hail, hail.